Hey everyone, in this session we are going to discuss what are the advantages of asexual reproduction, what are the disadvantages, and why the organisms have adapted towards sexual reproduction. Let's talk about advantages of asexual reproduction. You remember, asexual reproduction involves only one single parent. Hence, it does not have to wait for its partner to come and then only it will reproduce. Whenever it matures, it can reproduce. So, a single parent is needed. Hence, there is no dependency on other organism. It takes less time than sexual reproduction. In asexual reproduction, you talk about amoeba that occurs binary fission, you talk about fungi which reproduces through spore formation. Very less time is required. When you talk about humans, it requires 9 months for the baby to come into this world, right? So first, that is the second advantage of asexual reproduction, it requires less time. Then the offsprings which are produced are exact clones, or you can say copies of their parent. If you want the exact same structure, you have to go for asexual reproduction. And one more thing, as we discussed in the last session, vegetative reproduction, you remember we discussed about me planting the same plant as my friend had. So whatever characteristic I want, I can put in my plant, and I can plant, or in not only in plant, in any organism. When I go for vegetative propagation, and then I can create my own copy. So whatever characteristics I want my plant to grow very tall, I want my plant to remain short, I want my plant to give me more fruits. I can put that characteristic when I help my plant to reproduce asexually. Okay, so asexual reproduction advantages: no dependency, less time, exact copy, and whatever you want you can reproduce, right? Or you can put that characteristics in it. That is the desirable characteristics. But there are few disadvantages. Let's have a look at the disadvantage. It is said that since there is a single parent involved, it leads to negligible variations. And as we have discussed, or as we know, variations are very important. If an organism, uh, while reproducing, if there is no variations, then there will be a time when an organism, when a species will become extinct, because environmental conditions keep on changing. And if there are no variations, an organism will not be able to adapt. Okay, like if I would not have adapted to this technology, it would be very difficult for me to survive in this situation. I have adapted myself to this technology since I had some genes different from my parents, and my parents cannot use laptop, but I can use laptop very efficiently. This was the variation in me, and because of which I have adapted to this environment. Okay, and that is, for adaptation, variations are required, but in asexual reproduction, there is no variation. Hence, this is a disadvantage. Then, as you see in binary fission, multiple fission, when an organism divides into two, it breaks. There is no parent there only. So, the number of species goes on decreasing. That is, the parent generation no longer exists, ceases to exist, stops to exist. Okay, then as I said, if there is no variation, there will be no evolution. Like the variation keeps on accumulating over the generation of time. I have something new, you will have what is I am having in myself, plus something new in yourself. Your child will have my characteristic, your characteristic, and something new. So this will ultimately lead to formation of a new species, and that is very important because it leads to diversity means basically means difference, and this difference is very important for maintaining a healthy environment, a healthy ecosystem. Okay, so disadvantages are no variations. A very important disadvantage of asexual reproduction is no variation, and if there are no variation, it does not leads to evolution, no diversity, and hence no ecosystem, no healthy ecosystem, or the whole environment gets disturbed. Hence, as slowly and steadily, the organism have adapted to sexual reproduction. So, what is the importance of sexual reproduction? Let's have a look at that. Sexual reproduction is basically one most important thing which you see in sexual reproduction is it leads to variations. Please note this point that sexual reproduction leads to variations. You can see difference in every organism which is reproducing sexually. See a cat or a dog or a human or a buffalo, if you see externally the body design will be same, but there will be some difference between the parent and the offspring, and hence it is said that sexual reproduction leads to variations, and hence the organism has adapted to sexual reproduction, or it is very important that two individuals come together and give rise to a new offspring. Why do you require variations? Because it helps in survival of species, as I said just before this. And finally, it leads to evolution or formation of new species. So importance is leads to variation. Variations are important for survival, and finally it leads to evolution. Okay? The next question which comes to my mind is, how is this variations generated or taking place? It is said that variations takes place when the DNA copies. So, first I said, right, whenever reproduction takes place, what will happen first? Whether it be a sexual or an asexual reproduction, the first thing which happens is DNA duplicates, or DNA is being copied. And when DNA duplicates, what happens? It is said that the duplication process, or you can say a nucleus duplicates. So inside the nucleus you have DNA. Nucleus duplicates. So inside the nucleus you have DNA. And it is said that when the DNA duplicates, suppose this is your DNA, and when it forms its a copy, this is a copy of the DNA being formed during sexual reproduction. It is said that this copying mechanism is not accurate. It is not 100% right. It leads to say 0.1% of the mistake. This is what an example I am giving. It can lead to 0.1% of some difference, and because of that inaccuracy, and because of this inaccuracy, you can say that this new DNA which is formed is slightly different than the older DNA, right? So, why is the variation happening? Because the DNA copying mechanism is not accurate. It is not 100% correct, right? And hence, it leads to variations, and these variations are important for survival. Now, actually how sexual reproduction takes place. We'll see that, okay? It is said that sexual reproduction takes place when a DNA from a male and a DNA from a female comes and forms a new offspring. So, sexual reproduction takes place by fusion of DNA from two different individuals. Okay, fusion means basically you can say mixing of DNA. And if the DNA is mixed, but obviously you will have more variations, right? I mix my and my husband's DNA, so my daughter or my son will have more difference between me, and when you compare my son or my daughter to me and my son or my daughter to my husband. Why? Because there is two different DNAs being mixed together, right? Right, if I give you chocolate from I say I have one melody, and my husband is having 5 star, okay, and whenever I give it to my son, I'm giving melody and 5 star both, because humans are reproducing sexually. So when the chocolate will, when you mix some chocolate melody and 5 star, you will have a new chocolate out of it. Same way it happens in humans also. The DNA from the mother and father gets mixed up, and the DNA which a child has is somewhat different than the parents. But you know, our DNA has 46 chromosomes. One DNA, that is, suppose say mother's DNA, it is chromosomes. Just a second. Our DNA, or each individual's DNA, will have 46 chromosomes, or individual human cell will have 46 chromosomes. And if 46 from mother mixes with 46 from father, right? Because a mother cell will also have 46, a father cell will also have 46 chromosomes, as I said right now. And when the baby is formed, it will mix, so it will lead to the formation of 92 chromosomes. And it is said that a cell with 92 chromosomes do not live, it dies. As you can see in the statement, that DNA comes from two persons, that is a father and a mother, but the amount of DNA will be double in the offspring, right? DNA from the father, DNA from the mother, 46 plus 46 will have 92 chromosomes in the offspring, which is not at all possible. The offspring or the child which is formed should also have only 46 chromosomes, otherwise there will be no formation of the offspring. Then how this exactly happens? It is said that when an organism was becoming complex, okay, when from a yeast there was a multicellular organism, hydra, being formed, and then slowly there was human being formed, or more complex organisms like you can say a starfish or a buffalo or a cow being formed. As organisms become complex, every part of the body was given a specialization. Like, you can compare this to an analogy, like suppose there is a short company, a small company, all the work is done by 2 to 3 persons of that company. But when the company grows, okay, when the system grows, what happens? It leads to formation of large data. It leads to the formation of large data, and that is a reason large area which the 3 to 4% cannot take place, right? Hence it divides, it works. You do marketing, you do sales, you do purchase, and so on. In the same way, when the body becomes complex, what happens? There is specialization. Come on, you function the process of excretion, you take respiration, you breathe, and so on. So when this specialization was occurring, there was a special cell in our body which was called as gametes. Okay, so as the organism become complex, it is said that specialization was seen, and there was a special type of lineage, means a whole tissue you can say, which was there, which produced gametes, right? Now the last part, what are gametes? Gametes are the special cells in our body. They are said to be reproductive cells present only in reproductive organs, and these reproductive cells have half the number of chromosomes. So you can say our reproductive cell, that is the sperm and egg, will have only 23 chromosomes. Okay, so these are the special cells which are formed when the organism was becoming complex, and they are known as gametes. This is known as a male gamete, this is known as a female gamete. Then what is their speciality? They have only half the number of chromosomes, and as I said, there are two gametes, a male gamete which is known as sperm, and a female gamete which is known as egg. Okay, it is said that the male gamete is motile. Motile meaning it can move. It is said that always the male gamete will come into the female reproductive system and they will fuse together. They will come together, and then only the zygote will be formed. Like a boy always goes to a girl's house, marry her, and then get her back, right? In this, a boy has to move. The girl doesn't move from her place. In the same way, the male gamete, the sperm is always motile, whereas a female gamete is not motile. Whereas, what is then why is this present? Because it gives food. It stores food. The function of the female gamete is it gives all the nutrition required by the zygote, and when the male and the female gamete meets, it leads to the formation of zygote, which can slowly and steadily be converted into baby. Okay, so why we are not having 96 chromosomes, why we are having only 46? Because in our cell there is a, or in our body there is a special type of cell which are known as gametes. And what is their speciality? They have only half the number of chromosomes, and that is the reason a male and a female can come together and give rise to offsprings. So that is all about sexual reproduction, why it is important and how it takes place. Okay, thank you.